So we kind of covered some lore, um, and you mentioned a couple of things that I kind of noted in my head. So maybe we can talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
mechanics and how the game works.
Yeah,
Um, because I think like it is helpful having played both 3.5 and fifth edition of
yeah,
D&D because there's a lot of similarities in Pathfinder. So
there is. Yeah,
anyone anyone out there who's thinking of crossing over, it's not that difficult to do so. But there are some diff dis mm, some differences,
yeah.
and it's always worth sort of being reminded. So one thing I wanted to ask is how does death work? Because
Death.
3.5 and 5th edition handle death so differently. So how does
Okay,
Pathfinder handle
that
death
one.
and dying?
Death and dying. Okay. So, um, dying is a condition. Um, Pathfinder uses conditions for everything. Um, when you get knocked out, drop to zero, assuming it's not a non lethal attack, um, then you gain the dying one condition. If it's a critical hit, then or a critical failure on a spell effect or something like that, then you get dying two instead. You move up one because of Pathfinder's degrees of success. That's that kind of works into there. Um, your initiative
So sorry. So
moves.
what is degrees of success? That's
Degrees of
not something I'm
success
familiar
is
with.
the critical failure, fail, success, and critical success, and
Oh, I see.
it's it can move you up and down based on what you're rolling for, and it's also got the +10, -10. So if you're 10 higher than the AC or the DC, then it's a critical success. If you're 10 below,
Hmm.
then it's a critical failure. And in some cases, it will move you from a success to a fail or a fail to a success based on things like if your modifier would bring you, say you roll it, you get a 10 and the DC is 20, your modifier would bring you to a 21. It's a it brings you down from the 21 being a success to it being a failure because of that being 10 below.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Um,
Right. So death and dying. So you've got
Death and dying.
degrees of the dying condition.
Yes. So when you have the dying condition, you're bleeding out or death's door. You're unconscious, prone, all that sort of stuff, of course. Um, it goes up to 4. You can go up to dying 4, and once you hit that, you're dead. I think there's definitely a feat. I think it might be called Die Hard, which gives you one more, so you can go up to dying 5.
Okay, that's
So,
very funny.
um, on your turn, at the start of your turn, you roll a recovery check. It's a flat check. Uh, just like the death saves, you roll a d20. The DC is 10 plus your current dying value. So the worse you're doing, the harder it gets, but 14 is 14. It's not much worse. But again, this is where the degrees of success come in. A critical success lowers your dying value by 2. A regular success is 1. Regular fail is increases by 1, and a critical fail increases by 2. And then again, taking damage. If you're damaged while you're already dying, increase by 1, or if it's a crit, increase by 2.
Okay.
And when you lose the dying condition, you gain the wounded condition. So the wounded condition can,
Under what circumstances do you gain the wounded condition?
once you lose the dying condition. So if you're
Mm.
brought back to life, um, or brought back up, that is. So your dying condition reaches dying 0, or you're healed. You come.
I see.
You either come back, or you're at 0 with at 0 unconscious. But you gain the wounded condition. You gain wounded 1, and then if you already had wounded, you increase it by 1. Wounded is pretty bad because it increases your dying condition. So if you're at wounded 1 and then you get dropped to 0 again, you're automatically starting at dying 2 instead of dying 1.
Wow.
So you can imagine if you've gone down twice in a battle, you're wounded 2, and then you get critically hit, you're dead.
Yeah. Wow.
So it can add up pretty quickly.
Being wounded makes you easier to kill the next time.
Yes.
And how do you get rid of the wounded condition?
Well, it ends if someone successfully restores hit points to you with the treat wounds action, or if you are restored to full hit points and take 10 minutes to rest.
Okay.
And that ends the condition entirely. So you don't go down by 1 and then 1 and 1. You're just no more wounded.
Okay. No more wounded.
Yes. There is one other one that acts very similar to wounded in that it's increasing your dying, but not quite. And that is doomed. If you get the doomed condition, which I think is only from spells, there might be some haunts or traps or whatever that do it as well. That decreases your maximum dying value. So instead of needing dying 4 before you die, you only need dying 3 or 2 or 1.
Oh.
Doomed can be pretty bad. And
Closer to death.
Doomed decreases by 1 with a full night's rest. So that can screw you up for quite a while. And if your dying value is reduced to 0, so you get to doomed 4 or doomed 5 if you have Die Hard, I think that's the name of the feat. Then you just die.
I'm happy to indulge in that.
Yeah.
Whether it's a fiction or not.
You know what? I'm just gonna search it, just in case. No, I don't think it's Die Hard. It didn't come up when I searched. Damn.
Shoot.
Oh no, it is Die Hard. I put a space, but it is Die Hard with no space.
Die Hard.
You die from dying condition at dying 5 rather than dying 4. And then there is something called heroic recovery. So hero points are something that we've been playing with. It's baked into Pathfinder 2, just like inspiration is part of 5e. We never used inspiration in 5e.
Who's we?
My group.
Okay.
I would award it and no one would use it. I made it you award it to one another and no one ever used it. I gave
Oh, shame.
tokens and no one ever used it. So we just okay, we're not using inspiration. Nobody wants to use it, so we're not going to use it. But it
That's
is
crazy.
yeah, it's just something that our group never wanted to use at all. So we just didn't. We switched over to the luck cards that
Oh,
Adam
okay.
uses, and then
That's
and
pretty
then
good.
got
Yeah.
the crypt decks from Sans Pants as well, and we're using that in our last stream.
Excellent. Ah, that's cool.
Yeah,
So how do hero points work um in Pathfinder?
Pathfinder. You start each session. Um, I think it's a house rule or maybe a variant rule that you don't start with one if you're in the middle of battle when the session ends, but we've kind of tended to, if you're in the middle of battle at the end of the session, we usually just finish it unless it's going to be long. But you start the session with one hero point. Um, you can gain hero points by doing various things, but because I'm so used to not giving out inspiration, I kind of leave it to that module in Foundry where it just automatically gives one every hour
Oh,
to a random
see,
person.
now I thought I was being awarded for like excellent role
There
playing.
was one where you did something awesome, and I was like, okay, you get a hero point for that because that was awesome. But I'm usually not giving them out. It's
Yeah,
just the system just automatically grabbing one person each hour and saying, "Hey, you get one." I think last week Fisha had three, and the week before it was giving them to just random people. It's yeah, but you get hero points. You can use those to re-roll a d20 roll, and you can use them as heroic recovery, which means
right.
that
Okay.
if you have at least one hero point, and the maximum you can have is three per session, if you don't use them by the end of the session, you reset it one the next session. So use them or lose them.
Right.
But if you have at least one, you can spend all of them in order to remove the dying condition, stabilize at zero, and not get the wounded value. So you just completely stabilize, no wounded, no dying.
Like that. So when you say spend them all, so you you can do that if you've only got one hero point,
Even if you only got
but
one.
if you've but if you've got three, you have to spend all three of them
Yes.
to recover.
Yeah.
Ah, I see. So you can't be like, oh, cheeky, I use one hero point to recover and I've still got two in the bag.
Right. So what has
Got it.
happened
Okay.
before? I think it was Connor who had two, and so he rolled his recovery check and
Mhm.
failed. So he was like, okay, I'm going to use a hero point to re-roll that. He failed still. So he's like, okay, that's going to wait until his next turn. And his next turn came and he just spent his hero points to stabilize, his last one to
Right.
stabilize. So that is something you can do. I don't know if that's
It's a
the
bit cheeky.
spirit of it, but
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, fair enough. If everyone at the table's okay with it, then
Exactly, yeah.
that's fine. Yeah.
And then there are a couple ways to instantly die without reaching zero first, which have not come
Okay.
up yet, but it's something that can happen. Um, One of them, let's see. If you are reduced to zero hit points by a death effect, such as the Vision of Death spell, which is a fourth level spell, so you're a little ways from encountering someone who might be able to cast it, but not too far away. that automatically kills someone who is reduced to 0 HP. That deals 8d6 mental damage. So it's
Wow.
it deals quite a bit. So it's
Yeah.
possible to just completely kill you. But it is also on a will save. So you have a chance to oh no, it's not a basic will save, so you don't even have the damage. You take that full 8d6 even if you critically succeed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The will save is just to see if you gain frightened 1, 2, or 4, or are unaffected. The Grim Reaper is also a creature that can instantly kill. Holy crap! I was looking at D&D Beyond yesterday. The Avatar of Death is a CR0 creature in 5e. The Grim
Hmm.
Reaper is a level 21 creature. So
That's quite a difference.
that's quite a difference.
Just a little, yeah, my
It's
goodness.
it's got 43 in acrobatics.
Why?
Well, it's Pathfinder. Pathfinder numbers get crazy.
Uh,
Just wait. You get to the point where you're rolling a number and just massively adding to it because there's AC of like 40 and 50 and stuff, and you can still hit if you're high enough
yeah.
level.
Well, this is a good. One of the things I suggested earlier when we were discussing what shall we cover in this was uh role playing ROLE
Yeah, versus role
versus
playing.
role playing
Yeah.
ROLL, and so I wanted to, yeah, I think this is a good moment to kind of introduce that and talk about when you've got like a number, a character's got stats and whatnot. Um, how do you turn that into a story? How do you explain that? You know?
Yeah. Um, that's one of the things that I was thinking. Man, I'm probably not the best person to discuss this because I'm kind of still learning that. I mean, I've been playing TTRPGs for 5 or 6 years, but I'm still like my social anxiety is really bad, so it's difficult, and I'm still learning um, to do that and to tell the story for the players and to improv and all that.
Mm,
Um, but I don't know.
yeah, because
I haven't had anyone say, "Well, that was a shit game." So I think I'm doing well enough um, to do that for my players. But it's not something that I know that I can really. It's not something I think I can really speak to tell you what's going on because it's just
well, for
happening.
example, with so like in our game,
Yep.
as well as being coming into the game, several sessions in, and but I don't know you guys,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm getting to know the story and the characters and you as people, and so there is that social anxiety as well,
Yeah.
and there are times when I do or want to do um like explain. So, I've rolled up damage, and I want to like tell, explain, elucidate like what
Mm-hmm.
my character has done, how did it look. So, for example, when I first cast whatever that acid
Yeah.
damage
Acid
spell is that,
splash, whatever it's called. Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, yeah, so she like hucks a big loogie and
Yeah.
you know, um, and I kind of noticed that the other players don't do that very much.
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes. It's just like, oh,
It's
you rolled, you hit, but it's like, how did you hit? you know,
Yeah,
describe because we don't do location based damage, it's like you're free to describe, like,
exactly.
my
Yeah.
arrow hit her in the shoulder, and she, and so
Mm.
players can feel free sometimes to take some of the burden of the storytelling off the DM or the GM, and and just go with it. And so long as it doesn't cross over into, oh, I hit her in the eye, she's blind. Well, no, we're not giving her the blinded condition, because that's not, I haven't.
Yeah.
Or you can be like, actually, that's really cool. She's blind now,
Yeah.
so um, yeah. So I'm a bit self conscious because I'm fairly good at improv most of the time. Uh, I'm as we've joked a couple of times, I'm not playing a bard. I'm not playing a bard, but like I am me, Quill, a bard in real life. So I can't stop with the storytelling and
Yeah.
the illustration. But when other people aren't doing it, it's a bit like, come on, guys, tell a
Yeah.
story. Describe how your character did that. And I think
I
you as a GM can invite that by saying, like, describe how that spell looks, or describe, for me, da da da, and
yeah.
then the pressure's off you to have to tell the whole thing.
Yeah. And I try that when I bring in new players, and it's not that people don't do it. Just that social anxiety, you know.
Right.
And I think like Pat and I, we're cousins, and
Um,
it's kind of a family thing. I think most of our generation of the family are pretty socially anxious. He's been doing, I know for a little while there at least, he was doing Toastmasters.
ooh,
I think it was because of his character last campaign, who was I think they were a bard. I can't remember now. Trying to think back, but I'm pretty sure he was playing a bard then. So he was doing Toastmasters to try to open up, and I
mm,
do try to get that, and sometimes everyone does get into it, and sometimes, I can understand with Connor because he's playing frisbee golf constantly, so I think he's usually tired when he's joining the games. Sometimes the reason that he's late is because he is has literally fallen asleep from exhaustion from playing
oh
all day,
goodness.
and then we like give him a shout, and he's like, "Okay, I'm here." So
Oh dear. I
yeah,
thought I was exhausted playing at, 4 a.m. Poor guy. But I've usually taken a nap before, you
exactly,
know.
and that's what it is.
Yeah.
He falls asleep because he takes a nap, and then he's so exhausted that he just doesn't wake up, and we have to.
Frisbee golf. He's just playing he's just playing this frisbee game all day.
Yeah, I don't know when it started, but he just all of a sudden he's like, "Yeah, I played like 6 games of frisbee golf today. My legs are tired. It's so." And he was
Just
upset when
frisbee.
a place shut down in the city here that sold sold frisbees. These very
Oh no, my
specific
frisbee
types.
shop was
Right?
shut down.
I didn't know there was such a thing. I thought you had to go to like Sport Check and buy a crappy, $2 frisbee or something.
Yeah,
But
plastic disc, or aerodynamic,
yeah,
just the right. That's about. I don't want. I like. I don't feel like I know any of you guys enough to really tease, but that's something that, like, I can't take that seriously. Like frisbee golf. I don't know. Yeah, you do you. I've got some weird
yeah,
hobbies as well.
exactly.
So yeah, um, but it does take practice,
It does. Yeah,
um, but it is. I think it's fun. I find it,
yeah,
and I think, and especially knowing that we're kind of under a spotlight. there is a
Exactly.
level
Yeah.
of like you want to perform, you want to, very few people are going to be interested in listening to a bunch of guys sitting around at their
Just rolling.
computers
Yeah.
rolling digital dice and going so yeah. But so if I can be of any support in that, I
Absolutely.
would I'm
I
totally
would.
up for it.
I would love that so much. It's just like having a player who can draw. I would love it so much. We had one for a little
Oh,
while, but then she decided to go gallivanting around the world, so she couldn't keep playing. Um,
my partner is an ex one of my partners is an excellent artist,
mm,
but does not take commissions because the stress of having to fulfill one.
yeah.
He can't deal with it, but he sometimes surprises me with doodles of my characters, and I'm like, they're so wonderful. And I'm trying to get him into Sans Pants so
Oh
that
yeah.
like he can do some drawings of some of the characters we haven't got illustrations of.
Yeah.
So, like straw bringing him into the fold. Well, no of us, but so yeah. I mean that's that on that. Mechanics. So,
Mechanics.
what would you say? Uh, so you mentioned a knowledge. You can do a
Yes.
knowledge
Recall
check,
knowledge.
a recall knowledge in combat.
Yes.
What would you say are some skill checks that are underused that you might like to see your players utilizing a bit more or remembering that they exist? Because there's a
Oh,
whole bloody list of
there's
them,
a
like
lot of skills. Yeah.
shit tons of skills. So, um,
Um,
yeah.
Well, the recall knowledge definitely. I do have to remind people, hey, you can do recall knowledge because it can give you some information. The kind of information it can give you, like you ask a question and I can give you that information if you roll well enough. Stuff like what are
Mm,
their resistances, what are their weaknesses, um, uh, are they immune to anything? What kind of attacks can they do? Are they a spellcaster? That sort of thing.
mm.
Um, but other ones, let me see.
And if I were logged in to Foundry, I would bring it up, but I don't have the list in front of me. So,
Yeah, I've got the list here. The player core. I don't know that there's too much. I mean, there are things like uh, I mean, disarm isn't really good. I've heard that disarm is bad because it takes like 3 disarm attacks to actually disarm. It's really, from what I've heard. It might be better now with the remaster. I haven't taken a close look. But there are things like reposition where you can reposition a character, like an enemy on the field if you roll high enough.
oh
Um,
wow,
and it's not like something that you have to be trained to do. You can just do that. Um, Grappling is okay, not the best, but you can shove, you can trip. Tripping puts them off guard, so it lowers their AC by 2.
oh,
And let's see, what else do we have? Create a diversion. Pat has used that a couple times. Once to really great effect, once to no good effect at all because he rolled terribly. Um, and you can, here's one, demoralize. So
not a bard, not a
demoralize
bard, not a bard.
is an intimidation check,
Right.
and what it can do is you can make the creature frightened if you succeed. Um, it
I guess there's no sad condition. Like, oh, I'm
no,
just very depressed.
no sad condition, but
Oh, these guys didn't like my shirt. Oh, now I'm very demoralized.
Um, and then we've got uh, administer first aid. What specifically is that one?
Yeah, I need to know about that because yeah, so as we were talking about what I might, what kind of character I might bring to the game, I was like, well, you haven't got a healer, and so that was kind of the beginning of my
Yeah.
creating Florence. Uh, and so administering first aid, how does that work? Would that be something Florence would be like,
So
would do instinctively, or
it is two actions. That's part of the action economy. We can talk about the three action economy. But
hmm.
administer first aid is a two action. You have to have a healer's kit on you, and you attempt to roll to stabilize or stop bleeding. So it's not really a heal, but it is helpful. If they're dying, you roll, looks like DC is equal to 5 plus that creature's recovery roll DC. So 5 plus 11 to 14. So that's, yeah. And then stop bleeding is DC of the effect that caused the bleed. So
Oh,
that can be
okay.
pretty high or pretty low. Um, and yeah, so you've got the success or the critical fail. On a critical fail, if you're stabilizing, you increase their dying value. So
Oh
that could be
no.
bad. If you're trying to.
Did we do that last session or the session before? Or I seem to remember some discussion of
Oh,
that.
that was treat wounds.
Ah,
If you critically
okay.
fail on treat wounds, then you deal, I think, 1d8 damage.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was it. Oh my God, yeah.
And
Oops, scalpel, cut your heart
yep,
out.
I remember there was a time I was running Sasha's character because it was just before she told us that she couldn't stick around. Um,
Mm.
and she was trying to treat wounds on Ramsey, and I rolled a critical failure, a critical failure, a critical failure. And then I
Oh
rolled
my
one more critical failure, and Ramsey was like, okay, she's doing this on purpose. I punch her.
God.
Okay, she's gonna heal you with magic this time.
I had that reminds me of I was donating or trying to donate plasma a few months ago, yeah, weeks ago, and I've got quite good veins. Like,
Yeah,
nurses love me, and so they had sort of fucked up putting doing the thing. So when with plasma donation, they take your blood out and then they separate it and then they
yeah,
give you your red blood cells back, because you can regenerate plasma in like 2 or 3 days, but it takes like a month to regenerate red
yeah,
blood cells. So they're like, here you go, and like I could feel pressure in my arm, and the little machine was like, "Oh, not good," and they had to stop the process, and the bruising up and down my entire arm. And I was just looking at it and I was like, this has to have been on purpose. I pissed off the amateur nurse who poked me. I was like, you can't you, to
I
fuck up this badly has to be intentional.
I had one who went through the vein 4 times,
Oh my goodness.
just through. Oh, I must have missed. I must have missed. And then someone else came over and did it for her.
Oh my
It
goodness. Yeah.
was it was nuts. I was covered in holes. It was bad.
I'm a holy man.
And it wasn't even like outside holes because she wouldn't pull it all the way out. She was just pulling it back and then turning it, and
Oh,
it was not
oh
good.
no, no, no,
It
no, no, no.
hurt.
Oh my goodness. God, oh, bless you.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to trying my risky surgery feat or
yeah,
whatever at some point. Like, it's gonna
yeah.
be
Either
good.
deal extra damage or heal quite a bit, right?
Yeah. Um,
Um,
fun, fun, fun. And of course, since we all do we've got a year's worth of negative healing.
yeah.
Florence is a bit like, well, at least I'm
What?
not gonna get done for, for vitality magic because
Exactly.
nobody needs it. Phew.
That
That's
was, yeah, that was kind of a good idea for you guys to take it, but it's also kind of, well, what do we do? Because our healer can't heal us as easily.
and so actually I should clarify. So with the whole negative healing thing,
Mm-hmm.
we don't benefit from regular healing.
From
So like
healing
if
spells will damage you.
yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So treat
good thing to know.
wounds is something that you can do because none of you are undead except for Ramsey. Ramsey's immune to treat wounds. You have to have a special feat in order to heal him.
Right. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Um, yeah, so let's see. What would you say is like, one or two of the most important if I'm coming into, pardon me, to Pathfinder
Yeah.
and you know that I've played D&D, what would you say is like this is really important. This is very different. This is not, D&D does it this way, Pathfinder does it this way.
Um, Very much the first thing is the action economy.
Right.
In
Okay.
in D&D, you've got the action, bonus action, reaction, and move. So you can use an action to double move, and you can attack once with your action. You can cast a spell with an action or a bonus action, that sort of thing. In Pathfinder 2, it is three action economy. You have three actions. Everything you do uses an action. So moving uses one action. So you can move three times because you've got three actions. Or move, attack, move. But that's three actions. You can't split up your movement. You can attack three times in a round. Right at level 1, you don't need a feat or anything. You can just attack three times. There's also the
And what
reaction,
about
and there are free
spells?
actions. Spells typically take two actions. Most of them
Right.
are two
So you wouldn't be
actions.
able to do two spells.
Usually not. Yeah, there are some
Right.
that are one action and some that are three action. Um, Heal and harm, for instance, those are variable, so they can take one, two, or three actions depending on how you want to cast the spell. So you
Right.
can touch them for one action to do a small amount of healing or damage. You can, which is basically cure wounds. You can do a basic healing word type one for two actions. So you can do it at a distance. You don't need to touch them. You do slightly more healing. Or you can do a blast, a 30-foot emanation around you that affects every creature in that radius for three actions. And that does a regular amount of healing. It does the same as the one action, but it does it to everyone.
Right. Amazing. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually how, because they were doing so badly in the tavern. I brought in Hulra, Sasha's character, because they had an NPC that they could send out, and I was like, you know what, you can send her to get Holra so that you can have some healing. And they brought her in
Bring
and
in the cavalry.
bring in the cavalry. She did uh, a 3-action heal at level 2 and damaged a bunch of the zombies that they hadn't killed yet because they were within the radius because it goes through walls. So it just bam
Oh,
killed a few
wow.
of the zombies and healed all of them and damaged
I
some of
don't
the
know
other
of
zombies.
any spells in fifth edition that go like rules as written. I feel like every spell I've used has been limited to like it doesn't go like Thunderwave doesn't go through walls.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
So that's pretty cool.
it is, yeah.
Actually.
It depends on the spell, of course. I wouldn't say if she had cast a fireball, that wouldn't have gone through the walls. That would have just
Right.
stayed inside that room and blasted everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's because it does this healing energy, this vitality that I decided it went through, and yeah.
Nice.
Um, and yeah, that is that. I'm not sure where I was and what else needs to be said
Oh, I
about
was
the
I was just
actions.
saying like what are the top like one, two, or three this is very different from D&D
Right.
tips. So
So
yeah, so that the action economy
the action
um
economy, yeah,
is quite different and can be confusing if you're used
yeah.
to D&D. So
The degrees of success as well. We talked a bit about that, but that's completely different. Um, there are critical successes and critical failures in 5e, but it it does change with these degrees of success. I think I was kind of wrong earlier when I was talking about the plus 10, minus 10. Plus 10 is critical success, minus 10 is critical failure, but what it would be is if a natural 20 plus your modifier would still fail, because it's a natural 20, it would increase you to a success, and then vice versa for a natural 1.
got it.
So that's
Okay.
where the degrees of success would be. A critical just bumps you up. Critical bumps you up or down in those degrees.
That's really
Um,
helpful. Yeah. Excellent.
and then there are flat checks, which are just just normal d20 with no modifier. Um, most of the damaging spells, or a lot of them, will say a basic save, so basic will, basic fort, etc. A basic save is what you generally see in cantrips and stuff in 5e, where it's half damage on a success. But with the degrees of success, a basic save would be no damage on a critical success, half damage on a success, regular damage on a failure, and double damage on a critical failure. So there's that.
I'm glad you keep track of all those things because that's more math than my brain
Foundry
is
keeps
prepared.
track of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's good. It's nice to have the computers doing the legwork for us.
Exactly, yeah.
Um,
Um,
just
let's see. Another thing with initiative in 5e, it's all based on your dexterity. In Pathfinder,
ah,
it's mainly perception. The
yeah, that makes more sense
yeah,
to
the
me.
the default is perception, but if you're doing something, you could use a different action. Like when Visha is sneaking, the sneak the stealth roll that she has is what will be used for initiative if it comes up while there's some stealth.
Right. Yeah. I
I was
remember
listening
that.
to one actual play where they used athletics for their initiative because they were climbing up the side of a mountain, and once they got to the top, that's where the battle started. So they got to
Yeah.
use their athletics checks for it.
Who gets to the top first? Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Um. Oh my God. Like I'm at that stage where there's lots of thoughts, but like they slide in and out of my brain. I can feel them
Uh,
like little jelly worms. Like come back, come back.
I
Um.
know what you mean.
There was there were two things I wanted to like grab hold of. One of them was about uh spellcasting.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite different
It is, yeah.
in Pathfinder. That if you want to kind of talk a bit about that.
Um, well, um,
Because like the fact that for example my prepared spells I can only use the spell once and then it's like it's out.
yes.
Uh, that
So
kind of that
it's,
kind of makes sense to me as like okay, if I'm like if I was the way I described my character casting spells was like they've got little pokeballs or
yeah,
whatever, and it's like I'm gonna make one fireball and one you know of this and one of these, and then once you've thrown it, like that's it.
yeah.
But I might. So, is it possible that actually I've not tried this? Is it possible to fill my spell slots with the same spell multiple times?
Yes. That's how you would cast the same spell multiple
Ah,
times in a day.
okay. Well, I'm doing that next time because I'm sitting there going, okay, I've got a spell slot, and I'm going through the list, and I'm like, I don't think any of these are going to be useful, so I'm kind of taking a gamble
Yeah.
on like you know whatever, some random
Some random spell,
buff,
yeah.
yeah, some buff spell when I could be doing, electrocute everyone in the room
Yeah.
3 times in a row.
Exactly,
So
yeah. So
that's
it's
clever. Okay.
it's going back to early D&D Vancian casting. AD&D did it this way. So you
Right.
had to
I never
prepare
played
every
that
single
version.
one. If you played any of the either of the early Baldur's Gates, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, and Planescape and all that stuff,
I'm
that's what they used.
I'm actually legally blind,
Oh,
so playing
yeah.
video games is really difficult for me,
I bet, yeah.
um accessibility things turned on.
Yeah.
I just don't bother. Like everything, and so many video games are just like you're like a green man in a dark green field trying to find a light green enemy, and I'm like, it's just green. I can't
It's
see
just green,
anything.
yeah.
Or it's so you get those where everything's just kind of the same color, or you get like Banjo Kazooie. Do you remember that game?
Oh, yeah.
Or like I guess Mario games are also like just bold primary colors, but just lots of them all over the screen and lots of things moving. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, I can't deal with it. So I did play a bit of Baldur's Gate 3 because my sister very kindly bought it for me, and it was rather expensive. Um, but I don't see the appeal, and yeah. So anyway, sorry. So yeah,
That's all right.
you were talking about spellcasting.
Yeah. Um, so you are familiar with the 5e casting, which is actually available in Pathfinder 2. It's a type of spell casting called spontaneous casting. Bards can cast this way. I know you like your bards.
You I should have been.
Um, so they have fewer spells available, but they can cast them They can cast whatever instead of having to prepare the same one over and over.
Oh, that makes sense.
You, if you wanted to change up Florence to be able to cast that way, there is actually a feat you can take. I'm not sure. It might actually be an archetype you have to take in order to do it,
Okay.
but it is something that can be available to you at one point to jump into that. There is also heightened spells. So
Excellent. Yeah.
um, in 5e, if you want to cast a fireball at 4th level, you use up one of your 4th level slots. That's how it would work with a spontaneous caster. But Florence, as a druid, you could take that fireball and prepare it at 3rd level, but then also prepare it at 4th level. And then you've got a regular fireball and an upcast fireball.
Yeah.
And then, much like 5e, cantrips automatically scale like that as well. So they automatically heighten to the highest spell level that you can cast. Cantrips are kind of weird in that they're like cantrip, so rank 1 cantrip, rank 2 cantrip, but they're all a cantrip, so you can take them, and then they're just stronger at rank 2, rank 3, yada
I do
yada.
like, yeah, the selection of cantrips and their function. I definitely prefer Pathfinder
Yeah,
to 5e in so far in my limited experience so far.
I do
Um,
like that you're not stuck with the cantrips that you selected as well. In
yeah,
5e, you pick your cantrips, and that's it until you get more cantrips. In Pathfinder, each day, okay, I didn't use this cantrip, or I used it and it's kind of shitty, so I'm going to use something else this today.
yeah, because I'm all virtually every character 5e character I've played, I always have prestidigitation on them.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm like, and sometimes I'm like really grateful for that, and other times I'm like, fuck, I've really used, yeah, wasted a cantrip slot, you know. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, with Florence, I'm like, well, will we do a bit of laundry today? I think not. Yoink.
exactly.
So that's fun.
And
That's
then
really fun.
another big difference is the focus spells. Um, when you are able to cast a focus spell, you gain a focus point. You have to use a focus point in order to cast a focus spell. Doesn't matter what level the spell is, it could be a rank 10 focus spell. It still only costs 1 focus point to cast, but you have to be able to cast a spell that powerful in order to do it.
Right.
You can only learn focus spells that are appropriate to your level. So you don't need to worry about that. I think the largest focus pool is what it's called. I think the largest pool of focus points you can get is 3. Um, Maximum number of points in your pool is equal to the number of focus spells you know, or 3, whichever is lower. So
Right.
because
Okay.
Florence knows 2 focus spells, you've got 2 focus points, but Not only has 1 focus spell, so he's only got 1 focus point at the same level.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
And then that gives you a special action, an exploration action, which takes 10 minutes, which is refocus. Spend 10 minutes and you restore 1 focus point.
Oh, okay.
So you would need to spend 20 minutes to get your both of your focus points back so that you can continue to do your untamed form. And then, yeah, basically the main things. I mean, there's ritual spells as well. In 5e, you can cast a ritual spell without spending a spell slot by taking an hour to cast it. Sometimes 10 minutes, I think, but usually they're an hour. Uh, in Pathfinder, it takes you 24 hours and you need at least two people.
Oh my goodness.
And you don't have to be spellcasters in order to do it. Anyone can cast a ritual spell.
Actually, yeah, no, I saw a little pop-up on Foundry last time that was like that was a reminder of that. But
Yeah.
as a person who like in real life performs rituals, I would never do a 24-hour ritual, but it is better if you've got more than a ritual works much better if you've got at least one other person to,
Yeah.
to carry all the incense. Get the thurible out. Why can't you light charcoal? I don't understand. It's not that difficult. Just
um,
smack.
oh, and
Cool.
two other actions that, as a spellcaster, you're going to need to know are
Mm.
sustain and dismiss. So if you've got a spell that has a duration that says sustained, it only lasts until the end of your next turn unless you use an action to keep it going. So
Oh, I see
it
what
may
you're
be a
saying.
two action spell, but it only costs you one action to keep it going each turn. But then that reduces the amount of actions you have on your next turn by one because you have to sustain
Yeah.
it. And then dismissing is, I believe it's, yes, it is a full action. If you've
Hold
got,
on. It's just with the sustain spell.
yep,
So if I'm casting a spell and it's sustain,
yeah.
is that a bit like concentration?
It is, except you can have as many sustainable spells going at a time as you have actions for.
Oh, cool.
So you can,
I always thought in D&D in fifth ed, like as someone with ADHD, I'm like I can concentrate on multiple things at the same time. So
yeah,
why can't my characters like uh, concentrate on multiple spells at the same time? No, no, no. You can only concentrate on one thing.
yeah,
How dare you?
yeah. You can do multiple at the same time. If you don't use sustain, then the spell ends at the end of your following turn,
Right.
or the turn that you would have to use sustain. Dismiss is also one action, um, unless the if the spell says sustain, then you don't need to worry about it. But if it's got a duration like a minute and you've got it going, but you're like, you know what, I don't need this anymore in this combat, I'm just going to get rid of it and do another spell, then you have to spend an action to dismiss it. Your untamed form would be something that you would have to dismiss. So spend an
Right.
action
Yeah.
to revert to your humanoid form.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
But it doesn't have a sustain, so you don't need to spend an action to keep it going. You just need to spend an action to drop it until you get to the end of the duration.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very important to know.
exactly. And there are like other things. You are able to use a shield, so you do have, if you've got a shield on you, you do have an action to raise your shield, and then you can use a reaction when you are attacked to block. Let me see.
B button. B button.
Um, block, 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 block. It's bringing up stat block and shit like that. I'm looking for.
Hey, one video game I can play is Super Smash Brothers because it's just mashing buttons, and then at the end you see who mashed buttons the best.
Yeah.
I genuinely
Um,
can't follow my character in that game.
I am, yeah, it's nuts. So yeah, you don't get the shield bonus to your AC unless you use Raise a Shield, the Raise a Shield
Right.
action. And then I believe it automatically, or you can choose to use it, at least in Foundry, you can choose to click block, and then the damage that you would have taken gets applied to your shield, and anything else
Um,
goes to you. So your shield has hit points, and once it's out of hit points, then the rest of the damage continues onto you. And it can get broken, and then you can fix it. Uh, that sort of
Sellotape.
thing. Yeah, exactly.
Duct tape. My shield is covered in duct tape.
It's the handyman's secret weapon. Um, there are actions and I think some spells that have a trait called Concentrate that has
Hmm.
absolutely nothing to do with 5e concentration.
That's probably a good thing to make someone aware
Yes, I was very confused and I had to ask in Discord, what the hell does this mean? And then people told me. So, um, all something means when it says concentrate under the traits section is that it requires a degree of mental concentration and discipline. Basically, if you are a barbarian in a rage, if you have certain conditions that don't let you think properly, like I think the stupefied condition might affect it, and a few others, then you can't use that action or cast that spell.
of.
But
Makes sense.
otherwise, you can use as many concentrate actions as you want. It's not like doing one prevents you from doing the other.
Like,
Keep
I don't
unplugging
know how I
yourself.
keep unplugging myself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like doing one prevents you from doing another. It's just if you have
That's
one of these
basically what I was
conditions.
saying earlier. It's like I can concentrate on multiple things at once.
Exactly.
I do it all the time. The difficulty is concentrating on one thing.
Yeah. And speaking of things that require concentration, um, there is an action called Ready, which I think we've discussed in game a couple times.
Hmm.
It costs two actions, and that is if there's something that you want to do, but you can't right now, so you want to attack, but you need them to get in range or something like that. So you ready your action. You can only ready a one action thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, a one action because you're using two of your actions and then readying that third action to do something like attack. So
Hmm. Yep.
you typically can't ready a spell because a spell costs two actions or more normally. But if you were, say, readying a heal, you could ready a one action heal if the creature gets right next to you or your friend goes down, so you're right next to them and you can heal. That sort of thing.
And what's oh, excuse me.
Yep.
What's your ruling on uh so I've played with DMs, GMs who have all sorts of different like house rules for how
Mm-hmm.
they handle readying. Some are like, all you have to do is say I'm readying an action and then
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. And others are like, no, you need to tell me exactly what action you're readying and what the trigger is and all of that. So what is your sort of policy on that?
Well, it's actually written right in the action description.
Okay.
Um, you prepare to use an action that will occur outside your turn. Choose a single action or free action you can use and designate a trigger. Your turn then ends if the trigger you designated occurs before the start of your next turn. You can use the chosen action as a reaction, provided you still meet the requirements to use it. So it is pretty much that. very strict thing written right into the rules of the game.
Fair enough. Yeah, excellent.
There is also delay, which is a free action on your turn. You can, at the start of your turn, right when it starts, you can choose to delay your action or your turn until a specific time. And that's not something that you have to trigger. It's just, I want to delay, and then let me know before the start of your next turn when you want to start, and then you're back into
You can
initiative.
kind of place yourself in a different initiative order.
Basically, yeah.
Well, that's cool.
It
Yeah.
does change your initiative going forward as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I like that because sometimes I yeah I tend to not like getting a high initiative and
Mm-hmm.
being going first. So having that option to yeah to delay
Yeah.
appeals to me. So neat.
And then there is the seek action. So that's something that you can use in combat. It's just one action. If there's something that, say, a trap is going off and you go into initiative because of the trap, you can use the seek action to see, is there a switch? If you didn't spot it before, is there a switch? Okay.
Ah,
And now I can use my other actions to go over there or point it out so that someone else can if I don't have enough actions.
clever. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
can work with that.
that's
Yeah.
mostly it. Oh, and there's take cover. That's another one that you guys should know as well. If you're benefiting from cover, that's if there's something high enough that you can take cover behind, you are already getting lesser cover, so you can use the take cover action, one action, to, it says press yourself against a wall or duck behind an obstacle to take better advantage. So if you were already getting standard cover, you get greater cover. So it goes from a +2 to your AC to a +4. And I think greater also gives you a boost to reflex saves against area effects and stealth checks to hide, sneak, or otherwise avoid detection. So if you take cover, then you can sneak. You've got a +4 to your sneak.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant.
And I think that's basically all the ones that I remembered that you might need. There's grab an edge, but that happened in our last game as well. The little kid skeleton grabbed an edge when he was shoved off, so
Um,
that's something that can be done as
but
well.
only.
So the
Do you
highs
know
and
what
lows.
happens
Yeah.
if do you know what happens if you work your fingers to the bone your whole life?
No.
You get bony fingers. Ugh, sorry. Not a bug, not a
That's
bug,
one
not
of
a bug.
those ones that you tell a kid that and tell them to say it to another adult because they will get the biggest laugh and they will have such a good time that they gotta laugh.
That's a good one.